to another episode of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. We are joined today by John Jarvis. Do you want to say hi, John?
Hey, Sophie, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. And also Emily Mancini. So we're very happy to have you on the show, Emily. Would you like to give a little bit of an introduction about yourself, first of all, so everyone knows who we're talking to?
Sure. So I'm a principal architect at Sympraxis Consulting, and I focus on user experience and information architecture, primarily using out-of-the-box tools in Microsoft 365.
Wow. I also just remembered that I didn't introduce myself. Sorry, guys. So my name is Sophie Dimolo, and Emily, I haven't introduced myself to you either, so that's really rude of me. But I'm Sophie Dimolo, part of the Microsoft Spotlight podcast, an account director for Geocom. So yeah, we've got that out of the way. But Emily, yeah, great to have you on the show, and thank you very much for coming on and just sharing your experiences, really.
Absolutely. So, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So tell us a little bit more about being a principal architect and how you've become a principal architect.
Sure. So I have a little bit of a curly past. So I didn't go to university for computer science. I actually went for English literature. And for the beginning of my career, I worked at leadership and training development companies. Then I became an executive assistant at a biotech, and I was a part of quite a few different software implementations. And I was in one meeting, we were implementing SharePoint. We had a consultant in the room. They told us we couldn't do something. I forgot I was presenting my screen, and I Googled how to do it and then did it. And someone in the room, our chief people officer was my manager at the time. And after the meeting, she pulled me aside and we had a talk, and she was like, "You're in the wrong job. Let's talk about getting you opportunities to transition to over IT. You clearly have an affinity for it." So while working at that biotech, I went from being part of the HR team to switching over to the IT team, and eventually became the platform owner for Microsoft 365 before leaving that company.
It's amazing to think how many jobs Google has got people through just Googling it, eh?
I mean, really true. And it's something I still do now, right? When we get stumped in Microsoft 365, the first thing is to go out to the internet and the community and see, has someone else run into this problem? How have they solved it?
Yeah, I think 10 years ago, I think I said the story a few times, but I learned how to do an Exchange Online migration from Exchange On-Prem using, let's say, a practical 365 blog. So that's how I started learning, like getting into the cloud. And yes, now I write for them, so that's quite strange.
One of them, though, isn't it? Like, so I've been in this industry now for only 3.5 years, so not long, but coming in, I always felt like I needed to know everything, and when someone asked me, I couldn't say, "Oh, let me just go away and find that information out for you." And I think now it's becoming a lot more common where people are actually thinking, "Wait a minute, you can't possibly know every single thing." So yeah, the power of Google.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Yes, the amount of different jobs people have got, including us. So, like as you said, you didn't go to university strictly for like IT services. Like, I don't, neither did I. But kind of, what was growing up for you? Like, what did you kind of, what was you wanting to be? What did you train to kind of want to be when you was growing up?
Such a good question. I feel like my interests have always varied, where for a long time I was interested in becoming a teacher. And then for a while I was really interested in psychology. I ended up going to an art college. So when I discovered the field of user experience, where art and design, psychology, all of that aligned with systems, I got really excited because I didn't know it was something that existed. My father was a systems engineer, so my view of IT was pretty different, where I thought a lot of the roles available were you're a developer, for example, and I was not interested in that, so I never considered going into the field.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I've done some work experience. I didn't do work experience. I'm far too old for that, but I was helping some kids. I was helping some kids. My company held like a work experience week for I think five children in college, so about 17 years old over in the UK, and we was talking about careers and stuff like that. And one of the first things I said to to them is what is the IT industry to you? And I have 5 different answers for all 5 different people. And I said to them, like, you're all correct. Like, it's completely different. One person, it might be coding. The other one, it might be security. It might be all the other things like consulting and kind of jobs. But I was like, there's so much more. There's also, the creative side of it and stuff that you've spoke about yourself. And also you've got the sales, you've got the account managers, you've got project management, co-worker services and everything else. So like, yeah, it's a vast industry to get to. And I think kind of like a lot of people have that mentality growing up, like me included and a lot of other people included, that it's just like coding. And it's not like that, is it?
Absolutely. So much more diverse than you ever realize or is ever really taught to you in school, which I think is unfortunate because a lot more people might get involved in tech if they knew how many more options there were.
So what was like the first thing you fell in love with in terms of IT?
Probably, I mean, when I was on the different system implementations, it was specifically Microsoft 365 and then also Oracle. And at first, I thought I was in love with training. And then I realized very quickly that I specifically love Microsoft 365. And I really disliked working with Oracle and really did not enjoy the community around that piece of tech where people weren't into sharing what they've learned and how to do things better. So it really specifically is out of the box solutions that help people be more collaborative and productive. I really enjoy working in that space.
And speaking of Microsoft, I see something in the background. MVP, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Do you want to tell people the journey to MVP and how you found it since you've been MVP?
Sure, absolutely. So becoming MVP was really special for me when I was transitioning my career into IT. I used so many of the community resources, and so many existing MVPs were thought leaders for how I could develop myself. So once I felt like I had some things to contribute to the community, it was really important for me to get involved to help another person who maybe was in the same situation that I was in. And I worked a lot with Mark Anderson, Simon Hudson, and Simon Doy on making the maturity model for Microsoft 365. We updated it from Sadie Van Buren's original SharePoint maturity model. I also work a lot with Mark Anderson on Microsoft community content, which is community submitted articles on the docs.microsoft.com platform. So a lot of where I am spending my time is in writing about Microsoft 365 specifically. I'm also part of the Sharing is Caring program, which does free hands-on courses. And one of the ones that we just launched last month is Writing for the Web. So it's specifically providing a 90-minute session about how to write better content for online consumption, whether you're contributing to these articles or whether you're writing for your intranet.
So what got you into actually working within the community? I know you said that you done it because the reason why you're doing it, but the reason why you're doing it because you use stuff from the articles and stuff in the community. But kind of what made you go, I know today I'm going to start looking within the Microsoft community? What was that trigger point for you, the light bulb moment?
Really good question. I think it was a lot of support from people who were already doing things in the community around me. So Derek Cash-Peterson's my colleague at Sympraxis, and he invited me to do a co-presentation about the case study of what I had done as a platform owner at that biotech, and to do that at an upcoming SharePoint Saturday. And then after doing that once and enjoying it so much and all the conversations that came out of it, Mark Anderson, who's also at Sympraxis Consulting, brought up maybe writing some articles. So it was truly people in the community seeing things that I had to say to our clients and then saying, hey, this would actually help the rest of the community if you would write that up or make a video and contribute in a kind of that wider sphere, which I really appreciated. And they definitely mentored me a lot to help get involved, which I deeply appreciate.
And if somebody wanted to kind of like contribute towards like the community content repo that you guys are doing and stuff, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely reach out to us. If you go to the repo itself, there's a whole article about how to become a contributor where it talks through how to submit your articles, how to submit article ideas. And then there's also links to hands-on training if you need some support submitting your articles through GitHub. And then Mark and I are always available for conversations. So whether someone contacts us through the GitHub repo for Microsoft community content or whether they find us on Twitter, we're absolutely here to talk about it.
Awesome.
So, Emily, obviously you spoke about what's involved within a principal architect and your journey. What advice would you give to someone, especially women, who wanted to maybe go down that path and get into principal architecture?
Good question. I think what's helped me the most, whether it be in the community or in my career, has been having close allies and mentors and making sure that I have someone who truly does see what I can provide and that value and knows how to give me a lot of the support along the way, whether it be how to navigate a meeting better or whether it be a trusted colleague who you're having a rough day and you're frustrated and they're cheering you on. I think it's really critical to build a community around yourself as you're making that transition.
100%. I wouldn't say mentoring as such, but I have someone who is just starting out and she wants to learn more about Microsoft and get involved, and she's in technical sales currently. But the advice that I gave to her was that the community is so important, and the power of the community as well is unbelievable. And you know, we speak to quite a lot of people, and I think everyone agrees when they say that it is a very strong community. And when you do feel that sense of support and the fact that everyone does want you to do well, it really makes a difference on actually believing in yourself. That's what I've found anyway.
Absolutely.
So would you say, or what would you say was some of your best career highlights or biggest career highlights?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I have one coming up that I'm really excited for. I'm going to be presenting on learning pathways with my colleague Derek Cash Peterson at the European SharePoint conference, and I'm super excited for that.
That's in Copenhagen, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've never been to Copenhagen either, so that's double exciting.
Yeah, I think
Is that
Zoe.
Sorry, go on, John.
I think Zoe Wilson's presenting there. Yeah, she is presenting there. So
Nice.
Shout out to Zoe when you're there.
Yeah, nice.
Absolutely.
Is Copenhagen, and my geography is horrendous, is Copenhagen close to you? I'm guessing not.
No.
No, it's not, is it?
Copenhagen's in Europe, and yeah, it's close to us. Not Emily though. She's in Tampa Bay. We aren't Miami.
Well, Emily, you'll have to let us know how it is. If you need any tips. I mean, I've never been, but any tips in Europe, I don't know whether you do or not. But no, that's exciting. What about, is there anything else that comes to mind in regards to, so you've got what you are excited about. What about prior? Anything else that's like a big career highlight for you?
I've really loved working on the Microsoft community content with Mark Anderson, having articles about the why behind the decisions we make in Microsoft 365, not just the technical how to implement, I think is really critical in supporting the community and making good decisions about what solutions they want to enable at their organization, because there are so many choices.
So would you kind of say, like, up until this point of your career, have you had like many big like challenges or anything like that along your way?
I think the biggest challenge was probably moving from being full-time at a company as an internal resource and platform owner to switching to consulting, just because it's a very different dynamic. A lot of what made me successful as a platform owner is a little harder to do as a consultant. So because I'd been at that biotech for 5 years, I could have long-standing relationships with people, and I was in town hall meetings. So I had a front row seat into what was happening at the organization, and I could recommend a lot of solutions. When you're a consultant, depending on how the company brings you in, you can be a little further away. You're not going to the all hands meetings. You have no idea what the company's currently working on or what their strategic objectives are or their challenges, unless that client tells you, of course, and wants to share that information with you. So I think navigating that change has probably been the hardest. I found it was a lot easier navigating a career transition at a company from being on that HR team to the IT team because there was so much that was familiar already. But changing companies outside, I think, has been the hardest. I do feel like I've been very lucky as a woman in tech where I haven't faced a lot of barriers there. I do feel like a lot of people have supported me and elevated my voice at the table. So I've been very fortunate.
Well, on your show notes, something that I'm going to quote and ask a question about is, you said it is surprising how deep the stigma runs that women don't belong in tech. What's your kind of like deeper thoughts on that? And I've got a question off the back of that.
Sure. So I guess the way that I experience that challenge very often is people not necessarily taking me seriously, or when I go to a conference, um, people not assuming that I have any technical capability. They're just assuming maybe that I'm, in sales at a different level, but I can't actually implement the solutions. So when I start talking about information architecture and search queries, I get a lot of second guessing. I get that mostly from strangers. When it comes to established relationships in the community, that doesn't really happen, which I appreciate.
So the question off the back of that is like, how can what do you think can be done more to kind of like break that stigma, break the barriers, so like so that stigma isn't within the IT industry?
I think it's really important for us to continue advertising all of the different roles, kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of this talk of how many different opportunities there are outside of development. And then in addition to that, having allies really elevate our voices and call out things when they're not okay in the room. So for example, having a male colleague in the room who sees me getting continually interrupted, to have them say, hey, Emily's trying to say something, I would like to hear her thoughts, is really, really pivotal and a lot different than me trying to be carving out that space in the room by myself.
And how about before that? I mean, you're already in the industry at that point, and yeah, that definitely should happen. But what about before that? What about at school when like young girls are looking at an option to go into a university, college, or whatever? Kind of what do you think can? I'll ask all our guests this. I'm not just putting you on the spot, but what do you think? What would your opinion be to kind of like change that at that level?
That's a really good question. And I don't feel like I have a good answer to it because that's exactly where I missed my opportunity, right? My father was a systems engineer. I learned how to type MS-DOS commands before I learned how to write. And at no point was he like, oh, maybe she would be interested in computer science, right? And so even though I had that affinity towards it all growing up, no one really caught that. No one really saw it. So I went on a totally different career until that moment, right? In that conference room where the chief people officer saw and she called it out. So I think it's really important to have a lot of exposure at younger ages to the variety of roles. But I'd love to hear both of your thoughts too, seeing that I missed out on this so much.
I mean, something I said, sorry, Sophie, Sanka last week in the work experience session, I asked the guys, there was 5 guys there, and I was like, how come there's no girls here? And it was like, and these boys they're all 17 years old, and it was like, well, there's not one girl that does computer science at our school. I was like, why is that? And he goes, well, there was one girl that was really interested, but she didn't want to do it because there was no other girls doing it. And in terms of like social circles and stuff like that, she just didn't do it because of that, even though she had a direct interest. So then I said to the boys, why didn't you speak to them? Did you speak to her and kind of say, come do it, you enjoy it? Like social circles, like really, we're friends at the end of the day. And I think it's kind of like, I think I said to them, you boys need to step up in that situation, because although you're kind of friends with her and stuff like that, she doesn't know that you guys are like, it shouldn't even be a thing, but she doesn't know that you guys are okay with her being in there and being the only girl and stuff like that. So I think it's up to us to kind of educate like young men on kind of how to how to broach that subject. And it's up to the teachers at the end of the day, in my opinion, to kind of like start to and the government to go for that subject. Sophie, what's your thoughts? I'm talking too much.
Well, I think it is. The problem is within schools and when you come out, and even college and university, maybe it's not much university, but when you come out of that, IT and the IT industry is seen so much differently to what it is before in school and college and uni. As during school or college, was I ever presented or was I ever thought of within computer science? Not at all. It's the way that the system is and the way that they teach it. And I'm not putting that down to the teachers, although yes, some might be more traditional, but again, they're not in IT, so how are they meant to know how much it's developed? They're just not. So it does come down to the government, and it comes down to STEM and how they are teaching IT, because I literally remember computer science, and I mean, I still haven't got a clue now, but like going on building a game or something, I didn't even know how coding a game. And I was really happy when the man jumped over the blob or whatever it is. But I think it's just the way that they teach it. When you start getting into university, and so for me, the way that I got into it, so to speak, is at a careers fair. There was loads of different companies, and mainly to do with technology and little and other bits, and that's where I found out, because there was so many other roles to do. And I remember someone came up to me and said, "Oh, would you be interested in IT?" And I was like, "No, definitely not." But there's so many different people in IT, and you realise, so it is just that understanding and that educational approach. I don't see it changing, quickly, or I think it will just be that people like us will fall into it, or will get noticed maybe in a technology company and go down the technical route. I think that's how it'll probably be for a while, which is a shame. But I think that there's just too much of a strong stigma, and it's just not getting taught correctly. But it's one of them.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that. I feel like the challenge with how it's being messaged in schools is definitely not fully aligned with what probably would have interested me at the time. I do appreciate that there's a lot more like summer camps and after school clubs and things like that opening in the US, specifically focused on girls in tech. And I think that's great. And should I ever have a daughter of my own, I will absolutely make sure that I expose her to all of the options, and not just, a liberal arts education where I feel like that's where she will naturally be interested, right? My husband's a scientist, so they'll definitely have the opportunity to be exposed to that too.
What do you think companies can do because I work with partners, and I'll be honest, majority it is more male than female. I do always say that you do have to be some type of woman to go in and work in an all male environment, and I do believe that. Whether that comes down to confidence or just I don't know what it is, but everyone within the tech community, I feel like we all have similar sort of characteristics and things like that. But what do you think companies need to do to have more diversity within and be able to bring more women in, if that makes sense?
I mean, I'd love to know, yeah.
Well, I will acknowledge that recruiting is not my strong suit. But I know for me, what was really helpful that I appreciated about the biotech that I worked at was they were really focused on a company at developing internal talent. So whether you were in HR transitioning to IT, or whether you were a scientist who wanted to transition to project management, they were really focused on that strengths-based empowerment. So making sure that they could identify what that employee is great at and how that could benefit the company. So for example, if someone wasn't doing well in a position they were hired for, you weren't fired right away. They would try and figure out, do we have another opening that better aligns with what you're good at? And I think any kind of company having that perspective of empowering their internal employees to highlight their strengths, that employee is also going to be significantly happier because they're doing well, something that they're more naturally affiliated to. I've also seen some companies do like internship rotations, which I think is really cool, where you have just 1 year and you spend a little bit of time with each different department, because there's no way you're going to get exposed to what it's like to be a project manager in high school or university. There's no way you could know. So to have that kind of internship where you see the different roles, then maybe that's going to influence what you want to study and what you want to major in and totally change the trajectory of your career. I know that if I had seen more when I was in college, I probably, I originally went to art school and I was for fibers and material studies, right? So I was going to be like a gallery artist or a teacher. I had no exposure to the corporate world and what it would be like in any office role. So that definitely makes a difference once you see what it's like.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I think, sorry, go on, John.
No, go for it. Go.
I think for me as well, it is so important, and it just comes down to, again, maybe the internal promotions and stuff, having female leaders and being able to see that, that is a possibility and there is progression. I think that's a massive driver for me, especially. So sharing that and openly, putting that out there, I think is really important as well.
And what's crazy? While we're talking about this, I'm realizing I've only ever had female leaders in IT. I've never had a male manager since transitioning my career. So I think I have a really unique situation that I've been able to have those strong female inspiration and mentors. And they had been in the industry for significantly longer than me and had really good advice.
I think it comes down to as well, doesn't it? The benefits, and I know JCOM are really good at having a diverse team, and when you do start, the onboarding is important as well, to just get to know the other teams and to feel welcome, and I think that's really important. But yeah, no, that is, I feel like that is unique. I love it. I feel like that is a unique journey, especially within IT. So do you do any work, Emily, within Women in Tech?
It's a great question. I don't as much as I would like to. I think, the initiatives that I'm on are just open to anyone. And I definitely try to focus a little bit more on making sure we're reaching the right audiences. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I face is, how do you know how to find that untapped audience? How do you reach them? And that's something that we're definitely trying to learn more about so we can be more effective and inclusive.
I know that there are, so I go to a couple of events, obviously in England, so not in Florida, but if they ever do it virtually, then you'll 100% be invited. But it's
Awesome.
really nice. So there's a G&T ran by a woman called Georgia Linsky, and it's Girls in Tech, and she does really good events in Yorkshire, and all women go, and it was really nice to see, to be honest, and really nice to know that, we're not alone, we can all come together. So yeah, I think more things like that, and as well virtually, and meeting women, because obviously if it wasn't for this, I probably would have never met you. So it's nice.
True.
Just within the community, although there's loads of support and you meet people at events and things, I do think there could be more in regards to Women in Tech and just having virtual events or whatever it may be. And John, I don't know whether you agree or...
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely 100%. And talk about kind of events and stuff like that. You run the user group called the Tampa Bay User Group. That's it.
I do, yes, yeah. Tampa Bay Microsoft 365 and Power Platform User Group. Really long title.
Awesome. I'm going to submit a session later.
Please, we would love it. I mean, we're always virtual, so yeah, we would love to have you. We're looking for slots for November and December, so if you're free. I will say the time zone change is not ideal for you, though, because it starts 6 p.m. Eastern. So what is that, like 11 p.m.?
That's fine. We
Excellent.
We sometimes do these podcasts quite late at night while Sophie's tucked up in bed.
They try and make me do podcasts at 10, 11 at night. I'm in bed for 9 o'clock.
Me too.
I've got my pamper and my face mask 8 till 9, and then by 9 o'clock I am asleep. So appreciate you guys doing it, but I wouldn't look like, well, I wouldn't. I need my beauty sleep, John. You're beautiful anyway, so that's it.
Yeah, sometimes we do these 11, 12 o'clock ones, like 11:30, I think the latest one. I was tired though, to be fair, in that one. I was tired, but we'll do it. We'll do it. It's fine. We're good.
Exactly.
Thanks for supporting a global community.
Exactly. You know, like something that that we speak about here might not be spoken about there, and vice versa. So it's good to kind of get lots of different people from different regions and stuff speaking, because you know we all love the Microsoft 365 world at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
is Copenhagen your first international speaking session?
Second, I spoke at SEF in Stockholm in May.
Okay. Didn't know that was on SEF in Stockholm. So what was your title there? What did you speak about?
I had two. I talked about scaling SharePoint. So that's like a case study on being a platform owner of one. So it was about my experiences at that biotech when we went from 150 to 1,500 people in 4 years. And then the other one was about creating engaging and inclusive news for your internet.
Awesome. So have you got anything else lined up? Any other speaking except for the one in Copenhagen?
I do, yeah. I have a busy fall, which I'm excited about. I'll be speaking at 365 EduCon Chicago in September. And then in October, I'll be going to Boston for Collab Days New England. And then November is ESPC.
Oh, nice. Nice.
I always
Yeah.
like to ask, sorry, John. I always like to ask Emily, how do you, obviously you have your work, you have your day-to-day job, you do everything else on the side. How do you manage your time?
It's tough. So the first year, I've been MVP since February 2021. So it's been about a year and a half. And I would say the year leading up to get MVP, I was working full time and doing a lot of community on nights and weekends. And I found it really hard to maintain. So I actually work part time. So I work Monday afternoons, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Monday mornings and Fridays all day, I now dedicate to community time. And that's made it a lot more sustainable for me.
And is that something that your company is happy with? Was that a discussion that you both sort of agreed on?
Yeah, absolutely. Sympraxis Consulting is truly my dream job. They are phenomenal. They are very, very supportive and flexible with my time. 5 out of 6 of us are MVPs. So they are very interested in being involved in the community, definitely prioritize that and support it. Absolutely. And as a company, we actually do a webinar together every other Wednesday as well. So even as the group of 6 of us, we like to do community contributions. So I feel very lucky to be there, knowing that they have such community support.
Good question. But does the sessions that you do with your company, does that count towards your contributions towards the MVP, or is that?
Really good question. And I don't know the answer because they never tell you what doesn't count when you submit, right? So you just submit and you just are like, oh, well, that's what I did. My guess is it does because we are doing it in volunteer time and it's free resource. So it's not something that is under the like Sympraxis umbrella exactly. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Since they don't
Just
tell
wonder,
you.
like,
I know you can't get paid for community contributions, and the way our compensation structure works, that we're not. So maybe.
Okay. So what's your typical day? I know you said that you do like part-time stuff, but what is your usual working day in a sense?
I like to start my day in the morning with reading and kind of catching up with what's going on in the community because we all know there's releases every single day, it seems. So I spend about like the first hour with my coffee catching up on what's going on. I generally have a lot of client meetings throughout the day, and I get to build throughout the day, which is my favorite part. And then typically on a weeknight, I'll spend maybe an hour or so doing a community contribution. I try to get ideas for my articles based off of the recurring questions I get from clients. So if I have a couple different clients across different industries asking me the same thing, it's nice to have a documented one pager on that, especially because then when they want to give that answer to their senior leaders, for them to have a public resource can sometimes back up what they're trying to have happen at their organization. So I like to do those daily to close out my day. And then I live in Miami, so it's nice to close out the day with a nice swim in the pool.
So jealous of that. I can prove that today. It's absolutely roasting. I need to do that. I can't stop thinking about a sea or a pool. So who inspires you within the community then? Is there anyone that pops to mind who's been a true inspiration for you?
Oh, absolutely. Sue Hanley, without a doubt. My first ever conference, when I saw her speak, I learned about information architecture. I didn't know it was something that existed. And that's when I wanted to change my whole career. So I had the benefit of working with her. She was a consultant for me while I was at that biotech. And then I got to work with her on a project after I started consulting. So she has been a career-long mentor to me. And I really appreciate everything she gives to the community.
Wow, she sounds like an amazing woman, that's for sure. And I guess to sort of wrap things up, what would you say your future goals are within your career?
That's tough. I feel like the part I care about the most are the people. So I really want to make sure that whether I'm helping my clients learn how to be more productive and collaborate better, help them get their jobs done faster, be less stressed, enjoy their day-to-day more, that is incredible to me. I also care a lot about being able to empower and include more people in the community in case they want to get into IT, or whether they're in IT and struggling with a problem. At the end of the day, I just want to help other people.
And that's why you're an MVP.
I guess so.
Yeah, love that. John, have you got anything to add?
No. It's been it's been really good to have you and Emily anyway, and Sophie as well. You're not on here enough, Sophie.
I know, honestly, I've been so busy. Obviously, you've seen I passed my 6-month probation. Woo! But yeah, I've just been so busy. But more of these to come, guys, listeners. And yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having me on, John and Emily. Really good to meet you. If I am ever in Miami, which I hope to be, then I'll be knocking on your door and we'll be going for a swim.
Sounds perfect. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you both.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. All right, guys. Everyone, thanks for listening. And Emily, yeah, great to have you as well.
Thank you for listening to the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. Please make sure you hit that like, share and subscribe button to help us promote our message. You can also follow us on Twitter at MSFT Spotlight, and we're also on LinkedIn, the Microsoft Spotlight podcast. And finally, we'd like to tell you a little bit about BitTitan and thank them for sponsoring this podcast.
Remote migrations start here. Let Migration Wiz do the work for you. It's fast, secure, and 100% SaaS, which means you can migrate at any time and from anywhere. Migrate mailboxes, documents, public folders, personal archives, or even Microsoft Teams with just a few clicks. No special training needed and no customer downtime. When the work matters, choose Migration Wiz.